Hello, everyone. I'm Pamela Brewer, and welcome to this edition of M.E.S.H. This is the place every week where you get to listen to conversations about things impacting your emotional, mental, and social health. Today, we're going to have a very interesting conversation with someone, but before I introduce you to our guest, I want to remind you that mind reading is never a good thing. This is my mantra. Say it all the time. It is not fair for you to try to mind read, and it is not fair for you to accept that task. That being said, I'm going to start today with reading you an excerpt of something that today's guest has written. And it is, I will let him tell you more about how this came to be, but I just want you to listen to his words. He says, I can remember being about 6 years old, standing one day next to the French doors in the foyer of our duplex on Columbia Avenue when my father swept past me on his way out of the house. He stopped. He looked at me with his eyes flaming and flipped off a quick cut, something to the effect that he knew I wouldn't want to go with him, but he didn't care because he didn't really like my company anyway. I stood there, trapped in the glassed-in room, and I felt the hurled evil enter me like a cluster of flung pins. Every cell in my body hurt, a million tiny parts of me, and all suddenly stabbed me. For me, that was what it meant to have my feelings hurt, to live like my father, with my insides forever exposed to little waves of murder. For me, Bruce Jacobs, that is a powerful piece of what your upcoming book is about. Bruce A. Jacobs, welcome to this edition of M.E.S.H.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Bruce, give us some context, if you would. You are an author, you are a musician, you are a creative person in many aspects of your life. Give us some context for what I just read. What's the name of this book and why this book?
The title of the book is Fishing While Black. And I titled it that because fishing and being grounded in the outdoors was the bond that my father and I used as a kind of DMZ, a kind of demilitarized zone, where we could both be fully ourselves, where I knew that I needn't fear anything that he might do, and where we were both immersed in the joy of being in the natural world, which is a thing that he passed on to me. My father loved me. I always knew he loved me, and he always knew I loved him. But he was a very, very emotionally damaged man. His mother, his own mother, was mentally ill. And he really never had a chance to enter the world with an open feeling of being welcomed and not in danger. So our grandmother, his mother, who we came to know as Grandmother Persip, was kind of a notorious presence in our household, although we also, as little kids, made mean fun of her because she was not only eccentric, she had been so evil and mean to her own son. And so my bonding with my father began and sustained itself in the wild, in the outdoors, next to rivers, in the gorge, in the woods, where he treated me as tenderly as he would have treated a fledgling in his own arms. He did love me, but he was diagnosed pretty early on in our parents' marriage with a combination of paranoia and delusion, all of which made him overreact spectacularly to anything that was short of an outright, worshipful praise of him.
Bruce, let me ask you this. Clearly you are a male, and clearly you are a Black male. And the idea of, perhaps even more so in today's world, I'm not sure, but the idea of being Black and a man and talking about your feelings, allowing yourself to be vulnerable, to even notice that you have these feelings, let alone talk about them, write about them. That seems like more than a notion. How were you able to do this? Was this hard for you to do?
No, it was easy for me to do. And my father gave me the space to do that because he did that all the time.
Huh.
He would weep openly in public at something that possessed him to the point where that's the only response he had. He displayed his feelings sometimes more so than we would have preferred in any given moment. Uh, he was truly, truly, I'd say, a romantic, but in the good as well as the evil sense of the word. He read so much into feelings that he read too much into them. And they were informed by a script that came from his having been so abused when
Uh-huh.
he was young and when he
Hmm.
was helpless to do anything about it.
Hmm.
But the openness itself was a real gift to me, and it remains one.
You said that he had been diagnosed as being paranoid. Was he ever given medication? And if so, did he take it? Usually you don't
I,
if you're
I think
diagnosed with that.
so. I don't know if he took, because it started when I was pretty young.
Okay.
I
Okay.
don't know. I suspect so. I suspect that he was at least supposed to be on medication. I know that it all exploded when he made a suicide attempt,
Ah,
kind of a choreographed one, because he was a pharmacist, and he knew the dosage that would kill him, and he didn't take that much, but he
hmm.
took enough
Interesting.
to brush death and to end up in a locked psych ward for a while in order to like begin to become, to be released into society again.
And
So,
there's so much even in that, Bruce, for
yeah,
him and for you.
yeah, yeah, there is. It was, I mean, I made a cruel joke of it to myself as a kid. I might have been, I don't know, how old was I then? Maybe 14, something. My mother had just divorced him, and his response to that was to take close to a lethal death of sleeping pills.
Hmm.
And and my response to it, because it was kind of numbing, was to almost
Of
make it a
course.
joke.
Uh-huh.
I called the place where he was the loony bin, and I kind of made out as if it was some sort of terrible joke played by the world when it wasn't. And I knew it wasn't, but that didn't last very long. Um,
But
our mother was very good about explaining to us exactly what was going on with him and with
you,
his feelings when he couldn't.
you know, though, that referring to a place as the loony bin, that was really sort of the talk of the day for a while and was not considered. I mean, I hear it's Genesis for you, but for a long time, people were just sent to the loony bin, and that's the way it was described.
That's
And
right.
that's the way it was thought about. And it wasn't considered, well, it wasn't considered, period, in a lot of ways, but it certainly wasn't considered a bad or a rude thing to say. It was just sort of considered as a fact of life. That
Yeah,
person's crazy. We sent him off to the loony bin.
yeah, that's true. That's true. I used it deliberately as a kind of disrespectful, derogatory term because
Hmm.
I was angry.
Hmm.
I was angry with him. I was angry with the whole situation. But I take your point, and that's true. And I loved him as much as at times I loathed him.
Yeah,
I
well,
always loved him,
yeah, yeah.
and he always loved me, and he always let me know. It's the only male I've ever known who openly and freely would kiss me on the lips when he embraced me to tell me he loved me. And it felt, to a kid, it felt a little, yucky, dad.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
knew where it came from. It came from that deep, really romantic and totally emotionally possessed, totally vulnerable part of him that was like a child. And my mother taught us to understand that early,
Hmm.
which is what made my relationship with him possible.
As you talk about loving him and loathing him at the same time, uh, it causes me to think about and the fact that so often when we think about our parents, we think about them in one way or the other. Either they were great or they were terrible. And and many of us don't allow ourselves the space to recognize that our parents were human and that they were not 100% of anything. And parents have taught us what they learned. And I think if more of us were aware of that, that our parents learned something and that's what they taught us, not necessarily out of a place of maliciousness, but that's what they knew, we might have some better relationships with our parents and with our children.
I think that was a real gift from my mother to give that to me. And it's the reason I was able to hold on to um, really the holy place that my father and I had in the outdoors. And I still feel that with him, with his presence when I'm in the outdoors. I've taken it with me to Alaska, to the White Mountains in New Hampshire in the winter, to the mountains out west in California. I've taken it to places that are dangerous and places that are scary and places that, above all, are beautiful and inspiring and grounding in the best sense of the word. I actually came back from Alaska, my first trip to Alaska, and I quit my corporate job
Ah,
and became a writer with intent from that time on. And that all was part of the genesis of my father's presence in my life.
so I got a question to ask you about the genesis of things. Fishing While Black. Why are you writing this? What is this for? Who is this for?
That is such a great question. I'm writing it. I'm writing it because I have to.
Mm.
I can't not write it. I have been hiding from this. I've been hiding from. I almost said poem because I'm a poet too. And actually, I haven't told you this, I don't think, but this book, the genesis of this book, almost 30 years ago, was a poem I wrote in my first book of poems about fishing with my father in the gorge that covers that turf emotionally, but in a much more compact way. And I, I, I come to that place of honoring the outdoors from needing it with my father as a place where we could both feel anchored in what's good, period, and what we loved, period.
Writing it for yourself because you have to, which I would suggest makes the most compelling writing, regardless of what's being written, when the creator is doing it because they have to.
I will tell you, I have tried so hard to not write this book. I have tried so hard to ignore it, to run away from it, to get tired of it, and it will not go away, and it would not go away. And finally, I'd written two books about race relations, which and in the midst of that, I mentioned this to my agent, and she said, why have you not written that book? And I had no good answer other than what I've said to you, which is not a good answer. And that's how it happened.
You just referenced books that you wrote about race relations, and I do hope that you are willing to come back and talk to us about that. But in this conversation with Fishing While Black, what are you hoping the reader will get from this?
That's a great question. I hope what people get is two things. One is a tactile, I really mean it, tactile, a sense of like touch from the nervous system on your skin of the profound presence of the outdoors that we carry within ourselves.
Hmm.
And what that adds to and how that literally grounds your life. For me, it's standing in water. It's standing in the rocks in a stream trying to catch a trout. I am more grounded there than in any other experience I have in life. So I think part of it is the grounding in the experience of life, and part of it, I think, is simply the opportunity that it gives you to not only appreciate and love the natural world, but to also let it bring out whatever there is in you that comes out when you're that much more spiritually naked, which you are. Particularly, the farther you get out into the wild, the more spiritually naked you are, because the artifice of human society is not there for you to run back into
Uh-huh.
immediately. So I
And
guess that's what I'd say.
what I was just about to say is, just the idea of being away from the noise that is around us every day, all day long, that requires a certain degree of courage, I would suggest. We're taught to not think about what we don't want to think about. And what you're saying is that grounding for you is intentionally allowing the vestiges of that stuff to slip away and to be so much more connected to who you are, whoever that is, which is a really scary thought for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that's right. But what you've got to remember is that what accompanies that slipping away of what we call society is, I'll just say it, is the medicine, the literal and figurative medicine
Mhm.
of being out there in the world as it actually is. Native American cultures honor that place, and they honor its medical meaning, its spiritually healing and grounding meaning. And for me, that's as much of what I get there as anything else. It literally is a kind of medicine that allows me to coexist with whatever is most uncomfortable in my life, or to see how to solve it, or to see how to, like, you know, live with it or not live with it and make a choice
Yes.
not to.
Mhm.
So it does all of that for me personally.
In the few moments that we have left, Bruce, is there anything that you can tell us about the availability of Fishing While Black? I know it's in process, but and we can certainly put a link up for The Gorge, which is the piece that I read from earlier in our conversation. Anything you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, you can find that excerpt in the literary journal Shenandoah for spring 2025. There's a free link that you can go to. You can also get the link from me if you want to. I don't know if you'll give out email information about me or anything like that, but we could do that.
If you
Uh,
wish, we can.
yeah. I have an email address. It's a new one. It's called fishingwhileblack@gmail.com.
Okay.
And I can send you the link. You can also look me up on Blue Sky, the social platform, um, and uh, and you can find out more about that. It's in process. I hope to be finished with it by the end of the year, and I hope it'll be out sometime next year.
All right. Well, you're going to have to keep us informed about its publication.
I promise I will.
Truly want to thank you so much. It's delightful to see you, and I'm going to hold you to the promise you made a moment ago about coming back and talking to us about race manners.
Thank you. I happily will. I appreciate that.
And folks, thank you for joining us on this edition of M.E.S.H. This is the place where mental, emotional, and social health is always on the agenda. I'm hoping that you have found today's conversation of use to you, and I encourage you to share it with someone you care about. And I encourage you to come back next week. I'm here every Wednesday with a new program just for you. You take care.